Hello and welcome to this IELTS Writing Part 2 video. In this video we're going to look at a 2 questions essay. So to begin with, let's look at the exam statement and establish the general idea. Here it is. Some people feel that entertainers, e.g. film stars, pop musicians or sports stars, are paid too much money. So the general topic is about people and what they're paid in their professions. Okay, the specific details. Let's see. Maybe there are some tricks in here, maybe there aren't. Some people feel that entertainers. So that's a big one, entertainers. So it's not some people. It's not particular workers. It's not workers in general, it's entertainers. And they give some examples here, film stars, pop musicians, or sports stars. So I've mentioned this before. You don't have to talk about these specific ones. You don't have to talk about film stars and pop musicians and sports stars when you have this example. For example. Okay, if this was a different question, if it didn't have entertainers here, if it said some people feel that sports stars, if it specifically had here the word sports stars, some people feel that sports stars are paid too much money. That's completely different, and you have to talk about sports stars. But in our exam question, they don't have this, entertainers. Okay, entertainers are paid, and then too much money. So it's not far too much money. It's not they are paid too much money for what they do. There aren't many details actually. It's a nice straightforward question, which is lucky. But again, we don't want irrelevant detail. So that's they're the specific parts of there. Entertainers and paid too much money. The next step is to identify the 2 questions. In this case, it's very clear because they have them done separately. Do you agree or disagree? Number 1. And which other types of jobs should be highly paid? Okay, so that's it. It's fairly straightforward. I think, do you agree or disagree? Which other types of jobs should be highly paid? So I suppose there's a little bit of detail there. Should be highly paid. So something that's an area where some people might make a mistake. They might say, should be paid more. Is more exactly should be paid more or should be highly paid? So if you take a low paid job and pay them more, maybe it's not highly paid anymore. So you need to be a little bit careful. If you say nurses, if your answer to number 2 here is, nurses should be highly paid, then you're saying that nurses should receive, a top income level. I think that's what it means here by highly paid, that you get more than the average. Whereas maybe what you want to say is that nurses should get paid more, but maybe they should be highly paid. So that's a key word. That's a difficult one. Which one should be highly paid? Okay, so before we look at an example answer, I want you to think about your answers to the questions. Do you agree or disagree, and why? And it's not to what extent, it's just do you agree or disagree. And the second one, which other types of jobs? So, can you think of 1 or 2 or 3 other types of jobs that should be highly paid? Okay, so let's look at an example answer to this question. We'll look at according to the 4 IELTS writing criteria. The first one being how well the student answers the question or task achievement. So the checklist for when we look at an introduction of an essay, here are 3 questions we can think about in order to see if they're doing a good job of answering the question. Number 1, does the introduction introduce the general topic? Number 2, are all the details of the 2 questions included without overgeneralizing, giving irrelevant detail or missing details? Does the writer give a position to both questions in the introduction? So I suppose you don't have to, but it's always a very good idea to do that. Now, I have the word here, position. It might be like stating the purpose. For example, what are the causes? You don't have to write the causes in the introduction. You can write, this essay will examine the causes. However, if one of the questions is a direct question, then you need to give a direct answer, your opinion to it. So let's go back to the question itself. questions. So do you agree or disagree? So that calls for a direct position, you know, yes, I agree, or no, I don't agree. That's a direct one. Which other types of jobs should be highly paid? So with the second one, you could say, you know, I agree with this statement, and this essay will outline which other jobs should be highly paid. Or you could have, I agree with this statement, I disagree with this statement, and I also believe that these three types of jobs should be highly paid. But you have to address both of them. Well, it's best to address both of them in the introduction. So let's look at our introduction. Okay, we're not going to focus on mistakes, grammar, or vocab, because that's in grammar, range, and accuracy and lexical resource. Just going to look at how well it covers the three questions there. Okay, Star's wage is one of the highest nowadays. Some people think that they are paid too much. So they've got this introductory sentence introducing the general idea. It's about how much people are paid. So the answer to that is yes. One thing we need to think about is this word stars. So we have the word entertainers. Now, a clown is an entertainer theoretically. Is a clown necessarily a star? Maybe not. So always be careful when you try and paraphrase, when you try and use a different word from the word that's in there, you have to be sure it's the same thing. For example, if in the exam task it says children, can you write teenagers instead of children? Maybe yes, maybe no. The examiner should keep an open mind, but it's always dangerous if it is quite different. If it talks about cars, for example, cars, and you write vehicles, vehicles can be cars, trucks, motorcycles. So that's already changing it a little bit. What about this one? Entertainers, they give us some examples to give us an idea. Film stars, okay. Pop musicians, they're probably stars as well. And here we go, sports stars. Okay, so I think in this essay it's quite safe to paraphrase entertainers with the word stars. So yeah, they've introduced the general topic with that first sentence. Some people think, well, except for the paid too much, some people think they are paid too much. Okay, so there is a spelling mistake there. We're not going to talk about it. Okay, they are paid too much, while others think the opposite way. Okay, this is a little bit dangerous, because the exam statement says some people think that entertainers are paid too much money. It doesn't say anything about what other people think. Now, logically, some people think they're paid too much. Other people disagree and say it's not too much. Other people say they don't know. Other people say nobody should be paid anything. Everything should be controlled by the government. It doesn't say anything. There are lots of different viewpoints that aren't exactly this viewpoint. And you don't need to discuss it. So coming back to this point here, irrelevant detail. So this is introducing the general topic, I suppose. Not the two questions, irrelevant detail. So there's a little bit of irrelevant detail. Is it bad? It's not that bad, because it is connected with the task. But it's not discuss both sides. In a discuss both sides essay, a different type of essay, sure, you have to introduce one side and the other side. In this one here, where there's just a statement of what one group of people think, you don't need to say the other side or the disadvantages or anything like that. Okay, so I would just recommend for safety, just not to use that there. Okay, so again, it's not that bad, but it's just a bit safer. Like some people think that they're paid too much, and then you'd say, however, I think they're paid a fair amount of money. Okay, so that's number one. Obviously, the person disagrees with this statement. They disagree. However, where's number two? We don't have which other types of jobs should be highly paid. Okay, so there's nothing in the criteria, in the IELTS criteria, that says that you have to introduce your position in the introduction. However, there is something in the criteria that talks about your position throughout in all of the essay. Let's have a quick look at that. Okay, so this is the criteria, the official public criteria here. We see for band, 9 for task achievement, however, it says fully addresses all parts of the task. So if the candidate addresses means talks about. If the candidate talks about this second question later, then they fully address all parts of the task. But I just think fully addresses all parts of the task in the introduction, fully addresses all parts of the task in the conclusion. I think that's the safest thing to do. And then, very interestingly, if we come down to a 7, in the criteria, if we come down to a 7, we can see here, again, addresses all parts of the task, So even for a 7, you have to do all. And then here, presents a clear position throughout the response. So throughout the response means in all of your answer, there's a very clear position. So we've finished reading the introduction, and the author has not given their position on which, what was it there? Which other types of jobs should be, which other types of jobs should be more highly paid. So there's not a clear position in introduction. So an examiner might look at that and say, well, it can't be a 7 because I didn't know it at the beginning. It's probably unlikely, but you're taking a risk. It's not a good idea. Okay, let's look at the first body paragraph. Okay, body paragraph 1, task achievement. How does it answer the question? The first point on the checklist here, does each paragraph have a topic sentence that gives the central topic of the paragraph? So look, to begin with star's wage. Okay, to begin with the star's wage. It is almost fully based on people want to pay them. So it looks like there's the introductory clause, and this one is the first reason. That's what it looks to be. So that, to begin with star's wage, it's almost fully based on the amount. It gives me an expectation that this paragraph will be about the star's wages. And if we come back to the question itself, do you disagree that they're paid too much money? The introduction has just been there, so it's clear that to begin with star's wage, it's clear, I disagree with this statement, because we just saw that. It's probably a good idea just to keep yourself focused. To begin with, and a little bit more structure would help. Obviously, they're going to be, probably they're going to be 2 supporting arguments. Yeah. To begin with star's wages, the first reason why I believe, because it's your direct position, they are not overpaid is that. So this would make it better. It would read something like this. To begin with star's wages, the first reason why I believe they're not overpaid is that it is almost fully based on. This is slightly better. It just, again, throughout your essay. So again, at the beginning of the body paragraph, you've got your position. You don't have to because it was just there. But it's good to keep you focused on that throughout the essay, And also you've got here the first reason why. This gives the reader the idea that there will be another reason at some stage, and that's the whole point of this paragraph. Okay, but it's not bad. What could be does each have that gives a central topic, more or less. More or less. Okay, next one. Is the topic sentence connected with the parts of the question to be answered in the paragraph? Yes, it definitely was. There's not much detail at all. Our main idea is given supported with reasons and examples. So let's have a look at the main reason. So it is almost fully based on the amount people pay to them. I want to say that people who go to, I want to say probably better to use a different structure in an essay, but this is not how you answer the question. That's, I suppose, coherence occasion. People who go to 50 cents concerts, for example. Okay, so there it is. Here's an example. I'll do that in blue. For example, people who go to 50 cents concerts are ready to pay 50 cents. Ready to pay the amount of money he asked for the ticket's price. They're ready to pay the ticket's price. Yeah. Yeah, so that's fine. that's supported. Depending on how much space you have, in this part here, just here, something could be added. For example, it is difficult to argue that it's too much when all these people disagree with you. Okay, but that's already fairly clear. It's like, for example, everyone will die, full stop. This is not a good result. You don't need to write this is not a good result. Here, you don't have to say what I just said there. All these people disagree, but that could be put in there. I would like to say that rather than people here, you could write something like every person who goes to a 50-cent concert is ready to pay the amount of money. All of these people do not believe that it is too much. Okay. In addition, according to economic definition, so this is the second point, and this is where it's a little bit connected with organization, but yeah, so in addition is a big connecting word. It tells me that here's the second point. According to the economic definition of money, it is a thing that can be exchanged on some good or service if the customer agreed to the price. So this second point here, it begins here according to the economic definition, and it ends there. So that's the entire second half of the paragraph. It says it's giving a definition of money. Money is the thing that can be exchanged, okay, for some good or service if the customer agreed to the price. Every economist would agree with me. So we have a definition of money. Maybe there's a connection with if they're paid too much or not, but I have to make a logical jump. This is what the author wrote, and this is what they mean, and I have to make a jump from one to the other, which is never good. Okay, and this one here, for me, it's a big jump. Maybe because I'm not, intelligent or well educated enough to understand the implication of the economic definition of money when it comes to whether or not people pay too much. It seems to be just talking about that first point. Hey, they agreed to pay. Yeah. So unfortunately, that one there, the main idea itself there is not clear. Other main ideas given supported. So unfortunately, no. And in fact, so here it assumes the main ideas are connected. Is the topic sentence connected? I have to add another one there. Are the main ideas given connected and supported? Connected with the specific task and supported, and the answer to that question is no. Yes for the first one, and then no for the second one. Okay, are the supporting ideas reasonably connected with the exam point? Yeah. Okay, so yeah, did they support that at all? They had that every economist would agree with me. Every economist would agree that this is the definition of money. Yeah, I don't see how that's relevant to anything. Okay. So no. So that's half the paragraph is not connected. So what does this mean in terms of the mark? Well, first of all, we saw there for a 7 you need to have a clear position. Already I'm saying, why is this there? It's not clear. Let's have a look at the exam criteria. Okay, so I've got the IELTS criteria here. This is a 6 for task achievement, how you answer the question. So here we go. Presents a relevant position. So is the position relevant? The definition of money, is that relevant? Well, I suppose it's connected with people being paid, so perhaps yes. I'll give it a little tick, not a big tick. The conclusions may become unclear. Yeah, that's definitely true. That's definitely true. So that's may become unclear. Yeah, I don't know that the conclusion that every economist would agree with my definition. It's unclear what that's supposed to mean. Relevant main ideas, but some may be inadequately developed or unclear. Yeah, so the first idea was definitely relevant, but the second one was unclear. So we can see what would be a 6 and not a 7. Let's have a look at a 5. Maybe we need to go lower. Okay, expresses a position, but the development is not always clear. Not always clear. Yeah, and there may be no conclusions drawn. Main ideas, but these are limited and not sufficiently developed. So that's definitely true. That second point was not sufficiently developed. I had to make a very big jump, and I didn't know how to make that jump. So the examiner was thinking, oh, maybe a 5 for that second part there. So the first point was okay. It was connected. The second point wasn't. So probably thinking about a 6 currently for how the person's answering the question. Let's have a look at the next body paragraph. Okay, second body paragraph. First step, as before, look at the topic sentence. When it comes to types of jobs that should be highly paid. Okay, so that's very clear referencing. This is about types of jobs that should be highly paid. It's worth mentioning risky jobs. Okay, so this paragraph here is looking pretty positive to start with. So for paragraph 2, that's paragraph 1. So for paragraph 2, yep, it's coming in there. It's talking about which types of jobs. That's a good start. Okay, what about topic sentence connect with the parts of the question to be answered in the paragraph? Yep, that's good. So yes and yes. So okay with the topic sentences. First, 2 points here. Maybe 2 jobs, maybe 3, maybe 1. It's possible just to have, there is only one type of job. Okay, it is worth mentioning risky jobs. Okay, so more risky jobs is bigger wage should be paid. Okay, so that's the statement. Let's talk about risky jobs. The greater the risk, the more the pay should be. That's the statement. Is it supported? Often it is not the case. Okay, for example, people who capture salt for oil as may suffer from toxic gases that are usually situated near salt sources. Okay, so this is an example of the what's this an example of? For example, so they're using an example which is good, but people who capture salt may suffer. So they're talking about the suffering that these people experience. I think it would be better to have more risky job, the bigger the wage should be paid, and then here put due to the negative consequences they experience. And that would just make it 100% clear. Here it's not unclear, but again I have to make a little jump, and this one's fairly straightforward from what the writer says to what the writer means. It's a fairly little jump, and I can make it. I'm confident. I'm going to write it right here. Should be paid due to negative consequences suffered. There we go. So I've made the jump. Should be paid due to negative consequences suffered. So I've made the jump, and I think it's clear to you watching this video and the writer who wrote this that that's what they meant. Okay, but it's better to have it in there. Clear, clear, clear. For example, who suffer salt, you're situated near salt sources. Okay. Okay, so that's good. Risky jobs and one example of a risky job. Yeah. Okay, in addition. So, okay, this is coherence and cohesion. In addition, it's the same one I think that was before, more or less. Okay, rare, useful jobs should be paid highly. Okay, so this is, at the beginning they just talked about risky jobs, but here they're talking about useful jobs. So when it comes to types of jobs that should be highly paid, here it'd be better to have something like one of the wait, where is it there? It is worth mentioning. Here it'd be nice to have something like one of the categories worth mentioning. One of the categories worth mentioning, and you'd have to have here, is risky jobs. Because again, that one, it just gives an indication to the reader that Later they're going to do something else. So, okay, they've added here useful jobs as well. Should be paid highly. For example, stuntsmen should be paid a lot. In the world, there are just few professionals who are paid a good amount. Okay, I just had to have a break to check that I hadn't missed, when I took a photo, that I hadn't missed some of this response, which is not a good sign. So you should be paid highly. Again, the author hasn't put a reason in here. They should be paid highly. There's no reason. Because. So here I put the reason in due to. There it was. Due to. If the example shows the reason very, very clearly, then you don't have to. And here, you know, I think it did. You don't have to put it in there. But it's a dangerous game to play. If you make a statement, I think a reason is probably going to be necessary before your example. Probably. Okay, stuntsmen should be paid a lot. Okay, stuntsmen. Rare, useful jobs. So this example should illustrate that it's a rare job and a useful job. It's rare, I agree with that. It doesn't need to be proven. The writer doesn't need to show that this job is rare, but they have to show that it's useful to illustrate their point. In the world, there are just few professionals who are paid a good amount. So unfortunately, this is really quite bad because just few professionals, it's not stuntsmen, who are paid a good amount. So that whole sentence there is not connected with rare, useful jobs. There are just few professionals who are paid a good amount. That says that not many people in the world get paid a good amount. It's not about rare. It's not about useful. It's a different statement. So that's not connected. It's unclear why it's there. So I can cross that out. So what we have with the second point then, starting from in addition, it's just here. That's it. And we can see that they have a position. Registers should be paid highly. It's very clear. For example, stuntsmen should be paid a lot. So they've given one example of which type, you know, of this rare profession, rare job. But coming back to the criteria there, a 6, presents a relevant position. Conclusions may become unclear. Relevant main ideas, yes, it was relevant, but certainly inadequately developed, unclear. Definitely, that's true. And if we go back to 5, presents some main ideas, but these are limited and not sufficiently developed. There may be relevant detail. Yeah, so definitely relevant detail. Definitely not sufficiently developed. So again, the examiner is going to be, some examiner might give a 5 for this paragraph, some examiner might give a 6. Let's maybe go back to that first point. Yeah, again, it's the same story. The first point was okay. You know, you could even give it a 7 there. The second point, probably 5. I again would give this a 6. And it's interesting that both body paragraphs had the same problem. If we come back to our checklist, connected with the exam task main point. No, it's not clearly shown. So that's the problem. When they go into they have the idea that it is connected, but they don't support that second idea very well. Let's have a look at the conclusion. Okay, so the checklist here. Does the conclusion re-summarize this essay's position and or the writer's opinion on the 2 questions? Let's have a look. In conclusion, I agree with people who think that celebrities are paid a fair amount due to the fact that people agree on the price. Okay, so they've re-summarized their position, their answer to the first question. Do you agree or disagree? What other types of jobs should be highly paid? They haven't put in there. They haven't put in there. So again, just like the introduction, we've got point number 1, but point number 2. Okay, so again, it comes back to conclusions. The conclusions are missing. The conclusion for that second is missing. Fortunately, it's in the main body paragraph. So if you have a missing conclusion, what would it be down there? There may be no conclusions drawn. So this is for a 5 here. There may be no conclusions drawn. So in the conclusion, the author didn't draw a conclusion for the second one. However, in the body paragraph, they did. Okay, so again, the examiner could be a little bit harsh and strict and say, no, they didn't draw a conclusion in the conclusion. 5. But probably I think overall the examiner will give a 6 here. 2 main reasons there. Number 1, the introduction and the conclusion didn't express the position. So if you want to get a 7, didn't express a position for the second question. If you want to get a 7, you have to have a clear position throughout. And the second reason is in the 2 body paragraphs, the second point was fairly unclear. So that's what would bring it down to a 6. And a very strict or harsh examiner might give it a 5. Let's have a look now at the second criteria, coherence and cohesion, or how the writer organizes the essay. Having a look at the checklist here, we can see the first one is there a clear introduction, body paragraph structure? Yes, very clear introduction, body paragraph conclusion. Does each body paragraph have a topic sentence? So the answer is yes, that introduces the central idea. Paragraph more or less. We'll look again at that. We looked at that a little bit. Are ideas logically organized throughout the essay? Logically organized throughout the essay. Does the writer use a range of linking words to join sentences and ideas? Do they overuse linking words? So let's have a little look then at the logical organization of ideas and the use of linking words. The introduction, first of all. Okay, Star's wage is one of the highest nowadays. Some people think that. So that's okay. We start off talking about Star's wages, and then we give detail about that, one of the highest. And then all of a sudden, bang, we have a new actor, some people. So it's possible, but we need to link this second sentence. What number is this? So sentence number 1, sentence number 2. We need to link sentence number 2 with sentence number 1 somehow. Some people think that they, there it is. There's our linking word, that they are paid too much. So they comes back to, if we get an arrow, they goes all the way back up to the stars up there. It's not bad. It's not bad. But the problem is Star's wage. Stars is just an adjective. It describes the key actor. Get rid of that arrow. The key actor, which is, put it in purple here, is wage. And all of this information, highest, it's not about stars. It's about the wage. The wage of the stars is the highest nowadays. So it would make more sense, rather than use the linking word to they, it makes some people think that such sums, there's something connected to the wages, such sums or such income, to change the word, such sums or such income is too much. So that again, that they is not wrong, but just you've got to think about what the actual topic of that sentence is. The topic of the sentence is wage. All of the details are about the wage, so it makes more sense to connect the second sentence with the idea of wage and not the idea of the stars themselves. If we look at the exam question, some people feel that entertainers are paid too much. So that's different, isn't it? In the actual question themselves, it's not the wage, it's the entertainers. So that's why the writer, in their second sentence, that's why they said they, because that's what the exam question is asking you for. Okay. Is it wrong if you change it from they are paid too much to the wages are too high? Well, it's less personal. It's the same idea, but it's less personal. Did the writer deliberately, in the first sentence, did they want to make it less personal and then come back to more personal? I don't think so. I don't think they're skillfully organizing this. It's something to think about. That's what makes it feel a little bit mechanical. Star's wage is one of the highest nowadays. Some people think that they are paid too much. It sounds a little bit wrong. And the reason for that is the change of focus from wage to they. Okay, I think that stars are paid, so that flows a bit better because they're now sticking with stars. Stars are paid, so they're continuing with stars. Stars are paid a fair amount of money. Okay, so paid too much, paid a fair amount of money, that's logical flow. Okay, first body paragraph 1, which is when we can have a look at the topic sentence. Okay, when looking at task achievement, we already talked about the coherence and cohesion. To begin with, stars wages. Because this paragraph has 2 points. Point number 1, it's almost fully, and then the definition down here. It is better to change that topic sentence. To begin with, stars. To begin with, stars wages. The main reason why I disagree with the previously mentioned statement. Okay, but there is a topic sentence there. Coming back to the checklist, there is a topic sentence. It does more or less introduce the idea, more or less. Okay, so let's have a look at the organization of ideas and the linking words. Okay, so it, that's easy, but yeah, it's a linking word. It, okay, is almost fully based on the amount people pay to them. So that's cool. We've got people pay to them. I want to say that I think for an essay, the examiner may not mind this. I want to say that. Another examiner might say, no, that's not suitable for an academic essay. I want to say that. So it's probably best not to use it. And what the person is doing is giving an example. So rather than say, I want to say that to clarify, just say, for example, for example, people who go to. So you could take this for example and just put it up here. That would be a little bit more logical, because I want to say that is to clarify an idea, to make an idea clear. And you're doing this by giving an example. So rather than say, I want to say that, you can just say, for example. If there was no example, if you were just clarifying some of the ideas, then you could use a more formal clarification structure. What this means is, but here we're not clarifying, we're giving an example. So for example, are ready to pay the amount of money he asked for, to pay the amount of money the ticket's price. Yeah, so that doesn't flow. That doesn't flow well, obviously, because the author has crossed out he asks for. That flows. The amount of money he asks for is fine. But that doesn't flow. So that there's not great cohesion there within that sentence. In addition, again, it's not wrong. It's a big linking word, so it does signal, hey, maybe it's not going to talk about the ticket's price here. It's going to talk about something beyond that. But it's better just if it's a second reason or a second example or a second whatever, then the second. That's the easiest, most logical, and the clearest way to do it. So the second point concerning the second reason why I believe I'm of the opinion that the wages are fine is that, according to economic definition, it is. So look, here is grammar. There's a full stop and a capital letter of a new sentence. So it is connected with cohesion. It's not linked well, it's not connected well because of the bad grammar. So will an examiner punish you in coherence and cohesion and the grammar? I don't know. Let's call it cohesion for this one. Yeah, it doesn't flow well because of the full stop. It is the thing that can be, again, this is grammar, the thing, that points back to something you already said, but there's nothing there. It can be exchanged on some good or service. So the idea is here, it's not clear. Every consumer agreed on the price. And this one here, every economist would agree with me. And then some sort of explanation here. When it comes to regarding the definition, I mean, that would make it clear what the agreement is with. So, yeah, coming back to the checklist here, I is logically, so no. No, and that's the second, so first body paragraph, second point, maybe we can do that. First body paragraph, second point, no. Okay, linking words to join sentences and ideas. I wouldn't say arrange at the moment. There are some linking words. Yeah, so we had in addition, to begin with. We had all the its and the that's. Down here, it looked like the author wanted to do something that was a little bit more constructive as a result, but they crossed it out. My guess is the writer didn't think clearly about how to develop their idea before they started developing. So I think to improve both how the person answers the question and how they organize the ideas, planning needs to be done before the writing is done. And just think, okay, this is my second point. Am I going to use a because to give a reason? Am I going to use an as a result? Am I going to use an if? How am I going to develop this? Because there are only a limited amount of ways you can develop it. That would help improve it. So at the moment, it's looking like there is some linking there, and it's okay, but nothing special. So you're looking around about a 6 at the moment here. Better planning would bring it up to a 7, I think. Okay, second body paragraph. The topic sentence is there. When it comes to types of jobs, it should be highly paid. Yep. Like I already pointed out when looking at task achievement, it would be better to indicate that there are 2 points in the topic sentence. So, should be highly paid. One of the types worth mentioning, we talked about that, risky jobs. Okay, so that would improve it. Let's have a look at the organization of ideas. Risky jobs. More risky job is bigger wage should be paid. Okay, so there's no linking word there, but it's not required. It's very logical to put that there because, you know, let's talk about jobs, and then that's step number 1, identify the topic. Step number 2, give your opinion. Step number 3, often it is not the case, develop. One thing is the sentences are quite short. Okay, it's generally not a good idea in an essay, an academic essay, to have more risky job, bigger wage should be paid. Shortish sentence, often is not the case, short. It would be better for the flow, and this is connected with the flow. It's grammar, but it's also flow. The grammar's fine, it's not wrong. To put a comma and then just have here like which is often not the case, and that would just help it flow a little bit more. So I think just having that sentence there without which is a little bit mechanical. If you're writing an informal essay, it's fine, but not the IELTS, not the IELTS. Okay, for example, okay, that's the problem here. They had for example before. You want to use a range, and in order to use a range, you don't have to use one at the beginning of every sentence. It's not a good idea. That's mechanical. However, it's a very good idea not to use the same one in both paragraphs. And this has happened. In the previous paragraph, the author had here, for example, and in this paragraph here, again, they've got, for example. In this one here, we've got in addition for the second point. And in the previous paragraph, the author has written in addition for the second point. So, unfortunately, when you repeat things like that, it really comes down to here, does the writer overuse linking words, use them mechanically? It does. It's easy for the examiner to say, yeah, well, that's a little bit mechanical. You know, it's when I introduce the second point. It's like you've written a program. When introducing second point, put in addition. Okay, so how can we make that better? Well, again, according to the second type of job or the second area of employment which should be better paid. So I've got the wrong one up here. Rather than have, in addition, rare useful jobs. So rare useful jobs, and then here you could have are another type of jobs that should be paid highly. Okay, and then what's interesting is are another type of jobs. I can't just take this. I can't, oh, okay, I've used this to link there. I can't take it and I can't put it in here. Another type of job that should be paid more. No, I have to use a different phrase in this in addition. So you can see we're going from mechanical use of something that can be used everywhere to something that's a bit more specific, creative, and skillful. It's more skillful to use something specific than just a simple in addition. You can use in addition, it's not wrong. You could say, in addition to the first type of job, another type of job. So you can use it like that, but just in a less mechanical way. And that would come back to a range of linking words. If you want to get a highest mark, you need to use them skillfully. So that would help. So a couple of things so far. Make the topic sentence clearer in relation to what's going to happen in the paragraph. Number 2, when you go from the first point to the second point, also signal it in a more specific way. So let me actually write, oh, I did write that one, another type of jobs that. Okay. And here, unfortunately, the logic breaks down. For example, stuntsmen should be paid a lot. And coming back to the actor, the main subject of the sentence. So more useful jobs should be paid highly. We've got stuntsmen should be paid a lot. So that's okay. Useful jobs has gone to stuntsmen, which is a little bit different. It's gone to stuntsmen, which is a little bit different. Jobs are not stuntsmen, but you've got should be paid highly and should be paid a lot. So that's continuing the theme there. However, in the world, ooh, that's already jumped into a different one. Exist. It's talking about existence, and then few professionals. So that's where it breaks down, because this subject here, few professionals, a stuntsman is a type of profession, but few professionals, that's like every single profession, we don't know which ones, who are paid a good amount. And here again, one of the problems we have with the flow is here we've got paid highly, here we've got paid a lot, so that's continuing the theme. It's continuing the theme. Here we've got paid a good amount. Is that exactly the same? Now, if the other ideas were well connected, it wouldn't matter so much. But because that first part, in the world there are just few professionals, has jumped somewhere else, it makes this paid a good amount difference a lot stronger. Okay, so again, just plan how you're going to extend your ideas. Doesn't make sense. Conclusion. Okay, so in conclusion, I agree with people who think that. So in the exam, it was the author giving their opinion. And here they're talking about people who think that, but that's okay because it was in the introduction. That's okay. That celebrities are paired due to the fact that people agree on the price. So yeah, there's no problem here. The problem is that they missed the second point, so they don't reference back. We can't see their skill because it takes skill. It's not easy. You've just written in the second body paragraph, these are the types of jobs. You have to write the same thing again, but without sounding repetitive. So here, unfortunately, the writer hasn't shown their ability in this regard. Okay, so what about the mark? Okay, so looking at the criteria here for coherence and cohesion, I've got up 7 and 6. So to get the 7, here it is, there is clear progression throughout. So I think particularly with that second body paragraph, this second point here, in addition, currently it's clear they're moving into the other type, but then this last point there, it doesn't have any connection really with the previous one. Same story here towards the end. It's not clear where they're going with that. So the organization of the ideas, the organization, it doesn't have that clear progression throughout. Uses a range of cohesive devices. Well, unfortunately, no, because the repetition that, for example, and in addition, that's already brought it down. There's certainly some there. Clear central topic, more or less. Okay, so I think those clearer topic sentences would lead to this one here being good. If they had some clearer topic sentences, then that would be better there. Changing those, for example, to something else, for instance, making that in addition a little bit more complicated, a little bit more specific, would bring it up here. And thinking carefully about the ideas would bring it up here to a 7 then. But as it is, if we come down here, arranges different ideas coherently, more or less, there's a clear overall progression, yep. Uses cohesive devices effectively, yep. But yeah, mechanical, it does get a bit mechanical. May not always use referencing. No, I think the referencing used was usually fairly clear. Maybe not that one. Every economist would agree with me. It wasn't clear what was being, with me about what. That wasn't that clear. But yeah, I'd say that it's a reasonably strong 6 and can go up to a 7 quite easily with those points. And this would also, it comes back to organization of ideas before writing, thinking carefully about how you're going to extend them, that will also help task achievement. Okay, let's have a look at the next one, lexical resource. Okay, let's take a look at the lexical resource of vocabulary. There are 3 things to look for. Lexical resource: do they paraphrase or use sometimes at least some different words from the exam task? How much of a range do they use? And what about the mistakes? So beginning with the paraphrasing, we have stars wage. So we've got the word wage. What do we have there in the... yeah, some people say entertainers are paid too much money. Yep, so they've paraphrased that. Wage is their word. It's one of the highest nowadays, so high, that wasn't there. Some people think that they are paid too much. So are paid too much, is that like a combination of 3 words or more? Are, yeah, we have it here. Are paid too much. So it's 4 words together that's taken from the text. It's not a good idea. It's not a good idea. So they are, maybe you could put something in here. Are generally paid too much, and then you're breaking it up a little bit. You still have paid too much together, but at least you're breaking it up somehow. Okay, others think the opposite way. Nothing wrong with this word think. You can, if you want, use something less common. Are of the opinion that I think particularly because here we have think as well. Think and think, so it's been used twice. The examiner might not give you a lot of marks for using are of the opinion that, because everybody generally learns such expressions for this type of task. Unfortunately, we can't say think the opposite, are of the opinion that the opposite way, so we could put that up here, are of the opinion that. Yeah. So I think the opposite way. I think that. So again, we've got the word think. Think, think, think. That's not so good. Yeah, I mean, yeah. I believe, my position is that I adhere to the belief that okay, are paid fair amount of money. So fair. Fair. Yeah, that's good. There's no fair there. So that's a nice little one, that fair. Okay, so there is definitely more or less paraphrased, except for that one combination. Unfortunate repetition of think, but there are some other words that aren't there. Nothing, a fair amount of money, that maybe someone might say that's less common, so that's good for range. But obviously to improve this, projecting expressions. Projecting expressions. Spelling mistakes. Let's think about the mistakes. What have we got here? Spelling mistake there. That's noticeable. That's very unfortunate. That's noticeable. So, yeah. Okay, body paragraph 1. Okay, so I got the word wage again. So you got wage and wage. Nice use specific, like precise meaning, fully. I like that. It's fully based. And then almost fully based. So that's good. Some grammar mistakes, we're not going to worry about them. Pay them, straightforward. People who go to concert are ready to pay the amount of money. Okay, so no mistakes, which is good, but unfortunately not a lot of range here in terms of less common and idiomatic. Okay, in addition, according to economic definitions, so you've got spelling mistake there. It's not an easy word to spell, but it's reasonably common. It can be exchanged, so that's good. It's a thing that can be exchanged on. Preposition mistake, exchanged for. So a nice word here, but a preposition mistake. So agreed on the price. Probably would be considered wrong. Agreed to a price. But it's possible to say agreed on the price. So the examiner might keep an open mind. Every economist would agree with me. Okay, so is there less common? Let's have a look at some of the criteria. Okay, so does the writer use less common idiomatic expressions? So far we've seen like not much at all, really. Not much at all. That's important because if you want to get a 7 or above, you need to use the magic word some. Okay, Does the writer show precise meaning? There was a little bit there. There was a little bit of precise meaning. How often does make spelling mistakes? One in the introduction, one in body paragraph. I'd say occasionally at the moment. Occasionally. Are they noticeable? Well, that 2-1 was definitely noticeable. That 2 instead of 2. Yeah, let's keep reading. And if we go down for preposition and collocation mistakes, we had one definite one, one possible one. No, this last one, do they interfere with understanding? No, so that's good news. Okay, body paragraph 2. Okay, highly paid, that's from the task. Worth mentioning, that's quite nice. Mentioning. Risky, it's a nice little adjective. Repeated again here, unfortunately. What you could do is change it, the greater the risk the job has. Okay, big wage, okay, should be paid. Often it is not the case. That's a nice little bit of collocation. It's not the case. Perhaps less common. People who capture salt. So I don't think the writer wanted to create a specific idea of capturing salt. Give me 1 second, I'll check on Google. Okay, as suspected, it's not used. Okay, here's some nice stuff. Suffer from toxic gases. So that's definitely less common. That are usually situated near salt sources. So there's some nice vocabulary coming through there. Nice knowledge of collocation, some less common. Let's read through to the end. Accurate, no spelling mistakes. No spelling mistakes. Okay. In addition, oh, rare, useful. There's a bit of a problem. Okay, so that's something that this student has to learn. Useful, grateful, thankful. Anytime you have full at the end in an adjective, there's just one L. If you write the adverb usefully, yeah, 2 L's, but here there should only be 1. So it's a very simple mistake to make, and already occasional spelling mistakes, because the 2 of them are quite simple, the examiner might think occasional and noticeable. Okay. Again, you've got this repetition of paid highly. Did they change the word order at least? What was the other one there? Not sure. Okay, so a bit more paraphrasing would be nice, changing the word order. Stuntsman, okay, that's right, should be paid a lot. In the world, there are just few professionals who are paid good amount. Okay, so you can see that there's a little bit of range in that one there, but not a lot. Let's do the conclusion. Okay, so again, we've got this think, the third time now. Fair amount, that's nice, but repeated. People agree on the price, repeated stuff there. Okay, so coming back to the checklist. Does the writer paraphrase? Mostly. Not much. Yeah, definitely not much less common, I think we can say, in general. There was some in one of the paragraphs. Not usually. Spelling mistakes. I think, depending on the examiner, there's occasionally or sometimes. That one was probably occasionally. Most of the time the collocation was fairly good. There wasn't the range there. Certainly no interfering with understanding. So what we need to do to improve this, we have to basically, obviously no mistakes is better, but we have to use some more or less common stuff and try and show some more precise meaning. So let's look at a couple of the paragraphs and see how we can do that. So to begin with, stars, wages, fully based amount paid to them. I want to say that people who go to, so go to is not wrong, but what can we have with the concert? People who attend a concert. It's not difficult. The student probably knows this word. Are ready to pay. Ready is okay. Something that makes it a bit more positive. Willing. Ready and willing to pay. Then that's already idiomatic. Ready and willing to pay the amount of money. Okay, the ticket's price. In addition, if we come down, it is a thing that can be exchanged, some good or some service. I mean, here it's just a definition. every economist. So with predicting, you said would most likely, that's being more precise. Would most likely, would almost certainly. So anytime you're predicting, you can use this specific language. Almost certainly. What else can we do? Would, probably. I mean, that's not less common, but it is more specific. It's more precise. Would agree with me. And obviously, getting it would see eye to eye with me on that issue. Wasn't an issue, was it? It was a definition. Okay, so I mean that's already a little bit more difficult. But you know, if the student knows, it's a wonderful thing to put in there. And you can see we've already got ready and willing to most likely see eye to eye attend. We're already getting closer to that magic 7. Some idiomatic expressions, precise meaning. Let's look at the next paragraph. So what can we do here? Types of should be highly paid. Well, I mean, maybe the writer doesn't know this expression, but it would be a nice one. That rather than should be, you could write they deserve to be highly paid. I mean, I can give you lots of vocabulary here. Remunerated, for example. But what I'm trying to do is just take what's there and change it in a way that's not that difficult, but is more precise and less common. Okay, another example of an expression that we can change is this one here, for example. That's fine, for example, but if it's repeated, it's not so good. You can put here, for example, one example that illustrates this point is the examiner knows that you've just learnt this wonderful expression to use automatically, but it's still good to use it. Why not? You're learning English, that's always good. So that illustrates this point is people who capture salt, okay, for all of us, may suffer from. Okay, one thing to think about when it comes to range is adverbs. So may suffer. The simplest adverb would be something like may really suffer. Maybe not the best here, really. May typically suffer. It can be how often, generally. So you can think about making it stronger or weaker with something like really. May really suffer, may suffer incredibly. Okay, when you use adverbs like incredibly, you need to be a little bit careful because it's very strong. So if you use this word and the context isn't very strong, then it sounds a bit mechanical. But if it's suitable, it's wonderful. Inevitably, that's always a nice one. Here, may inevitably suffer is not good because may and inevitably don't go together. But I'm just giving you examples to illustrate how adverbs can be used where you have verbs to increase your range, especially if they're less common, like inevitably is less common. So it's more precise and it's less common. But you need to use it correctly. Otherwise, it's not precise, it's mechanical. Okay, so speaking about that here, which are usually situated, so there's nothing wrong with usually, but is it less common? No. So we can throw in something that's a little bit less common, typically. So it's not less common, but it is less common than usually. Typically situated near salt sources. Okay. Rare useful jobs should be paid highly. So there it is again, for example, repeated, even if it's something like for instance, should be paid a lot. So a lot's a good example, a very appropriate example. So a lot, nothing wrong with that. It's quite common. and may be repeated in the essay. So a useful replacement for that is a considerable amount. So that's quite useful. Most of the time you can replace a lot with a considerable amount. In the world, there are just a few professionals who are paid a good amount. So there you go. Again, here you could put considerable. I'll give some adjectives. Again, it's linguistic choice. Which one is the most suitable here for your opinion? Suitable would be possible here. Sufficient, that means enough. Paid maybe you want to say something a bit stronger. Substantial amount. Coming back to the topic here, deserved amount. Deserved amount. So particularly with the writing, when you have a word like good, especially when you're preparing for the exam, if you write the word good, you should read back through your essay, and if you see the word good, just think, can I replace it with something else? So a lot of the time students think, okay, good, excellent, unbelievable, you know, let's make it stronger, which is possible, it's possible. But don't forget about other words like suitable, deserve, sufficient. One that's not there I can put in there. Appropriate. Okay, so depending on the context, you might choose a different word. Let me underline that, good. So maybe, I'll put it, it's not wrong, I'll put it in red. A good amount. Okay, so if we now take a step back and look at the paragraph again, we can see that there are already some. Let's have a look at the criteria. Okay, so we're looking at the lexical resource criteria from the official public IELTS criteria. And I think 8's really good to look at. It's got some wonderful words. So, you know, wide range. Okay, lots of vocabulary. But that's it, a lot, a considerable amount. You're making it wider. Fluently and flexibly, what does that mean? Fluently use vocabulary when writing. Yeah. Okay, convey means give, and precise meaning. For me, that's a wonderful one there. Precise meaning. That's what you want to think about all the time. Precise meaning. Now, sometimes it can be difficult. For example, if you take cold, there's something that's a bit less common in chilly. So you can say, no, today's not, I wouldn't say cold, it's chilly. So cold is the general word, and chilly is a more precise word. Okay, so one example of precise is where you have cold, which is the general word, and then you have some more precise equivalents. So one of those equivalents might be chilly, another one might be nippy, and another one might be freezing. Okay, so they all mean cold in some way, but they're more precise meaning. It can be a little bit difficult. You probably don't know the word nippy. But there is another idea behind precise meaning, like cold. You could say very cold. And that doesn't improve your lexical resource mark a lot, but you're already starting to think about how to make your meaning more precise. What are your exact ideas? And then you can go on to, for example, unusually cold. And that combination itself, unusually cold, is less common. You don't hear someone who's intermediate, definitely. They don't say today's unusually cold. So, ooh, today's cold. They use the facial expression. Maybe upper intermediate student might use it. But yeah, someone who says it's unusually cold, it's unusually cold, surprisingly cold. The use of these adverbs is very useful for precise meaning. Okay, and then as mentioned before there, you've got the uncommon stuff. So you need to use idiomatic expressions, less common expressions. You need to be precise with your language choice. And that's what we're looking at doing. You know, if you come back and we have a look at this, illustrates is less common. That really, typically, generally, incredibly, inevitably is more precise. Typically less common. A considerable amount, less common than a lot. So less common doesn't mean difficult. It just means that maybe it's not typical for people who are intermediate or even upper intermediate to use this when speaking and writing. So what about this? What about this writing itself? Well, we can see here that now it's certainly a 7. because the key idea of 7 here is like some. So you've got some awareness of style and collocation. Users less common. I think that idea is not everywhere. Here we've got skillfully users. So users, and it uses a sufficient range to allow some. There it is again, that word. So there's some precision, and some collocation and style awareness, which is not a lot if you think about it, some. So what we added to this writing, I think, in terms of the range, would push it up to a 7. And then the other side is the accuracy, occasional errors. So probably there's occasional, maybe there's a bit more than occasional, but this would get a 6 for lexical resource because it did have that more limited range. Okay, let's wrap this up by looking at the last criteria, the grammatical range and accuracy. So as with the lexical resource, how much language or grammar does the candidate use and how accurate is it? Here what they say in the criteria, a range of complex structures. So that's like 7, 8, 9. You use a range of complex structures. Let's have a look at the introduction. Okay, a bit bigger. A bit small. Okay, so the first thing we notice, stars, wage, stars, wage. So you need a possessive there, and wages, the plural. So already we can see some mistakes. It would then be are one of the highest nowadays. Some people think they're, so one of the highest nowadays. That's a nice one, the superlative. Some people think that they are paid too much, while others, so that's a good use of while. That's a complex sentence, contrasting. Think the opposite way. I think that stars are paid. And then a minor article mistake, a fair amount of money. So one thing you can do to improve this, are paid. There's another grammar structure you could use here, tend to be paid. So that's already a verb complement structure. Tend to be paid a fair amount of money. Okay. Yeah, and that also includes the passive. So it's a verb structure with the passive, which is quite nice. So far a couple of mistakes. A little bit, you've got the superlative there. There's a complex sentence. Let's have a look at the first paragraph, body paragraph. Okay, so the same mistake from before. Okay, almost fully based on the amount people pay to them. Okay, that's good. That's a reduced relative clause, the amount that people pay. That's a relative clause, that. I want to say that people who go, that's who, go to 50 cents concert. Again, a 50 cents concert, or you'd have to say 50 cents concerts. So a problem again with the plural, or maybe a missing article. Are ready to pay, that's good, an adjective plus infinitive. So complex structures don't have to be difficult. Are ready to pay the amount of money. And here's that grammar mistake. Because of the correction he asks for, that would have been another complex structure. Are ready to pay the amount of money that is the ticket's price. So unfortunately, because of that correction, there's another mistake there. Okay, according to economic, okay, so again, the economic definition of money. I think that's a spelling mistake I didn't see before. It is the thing that can be exchanged. So article mistake, a thing, but that's good, can be. Sorry, it should be again. It's the passive with the modal verb, that, and then you've also got that, the thing that, so it's defining relative clause. On some good or service. If customers, so that's good. If, that's another complex sentence. Customers, is there an S there? Agreed on the price. Every economist would agree with me. So that's good. That's a very good use of the modal there. Every economist would agree. So it's not second conditional. It's just, you can't say this is 100% fact, but you're very sure. So you use would. So that's good. That's very good use of a modal verb. So we can see here, the range is okay. There is a range. There is a range. Is it a wide range? Maybe not quite. But where can we make it bigger? To begin with, a nice infinitive structure. yeah, I mean, it's difficult to really throw in more grammar there. So that's okay. The problem here, I think, is more the accuracy. Next paragraph. Okay, so this begins with quite a complex sentence when it comes to, so, an introductory clause, and within that there's a relative clause. There looks to be a comma there, is there? I think there is. If not, it's a mistake, but I'm pretty sure there's a comma there. Okay, now it is. It looks like they crossed this out. It should be it is worth mentioning, but if they crossed it out, then it's wrong. So I'm just going to put it, and it's a capital I anyway. It should be a smaller I. It is. Okay, so there's a comma there, and then it is. So unfortunately, that would have been a very complex sentence with no mistakes, but there's a mistake in it there. Okay, worth mentioning, that's good. They've got worth plus ing. Risky jobs. Oh, I see, they've put risky jobs at the beginning here. Well, risky jobs are. Okay, so it is worth mentioning risky jobs, or version number 2. So version number 1, it is worth mentioning risky jobs. Version number 2, risky jobs are worth mentioning. Okay, but again, there's a capital letter. Okay, but this is part of the same sentence. Okay, so here's a mistake. More risky job, more bigger wage results. So one of the key differences between a 6 and a 7 for grammatical range and accuracy, both a 6 and a 7 use a mix of complex structures and simple structures. Simple structures are okay. The difference between a 6 and a 7 is that generally the 7 gets the complex structures correct. Generally, there are some mistakes, but they're generally correct. A 6, generally, they have difficulty with these complex structures. And this is a very good example of this because they had the complex structures here, but they got a little bit wrong in that first sentence. They got to the second sentence, they've got a complex structure and it's wrong. So we can see that they're using the complex structures, but the control's not quite there for a 7. Okay, how do we correct that? Well, let me type it in here. The riskier a job is, the more, I'll just change the words because the greater the wage should be. Okay, so it's a the structure. It's required there. Should be. Okay, we talked before about how to make this a more complex sentence. Comma, could put comma and then which. I'll just put W here. Which is often not the case. Okay, people who capture. So we can make this, that's correct, and I'll underline it because it's a relative clause. But we can make it more complex by throwing in something like people whose job it is to capture, to collect salt. For all of us may suffer. So that's a good use of a modal verb, may suffer. Now, I think when talking about your meaning, your precise idea, your exact idea, perhaps here it's not may. Perhaps you want to say may is maybe yes, maybe no, but you probably want to be stronger because you know they should be paid more. They may suffer, but maybe not. So if they don't suffer, why pay them more? So what is a modal verb? You could say will probably suffer. You could make it stronger, but a very nice modal verb structure, may well suffer. May well suffer. And that is something that not a lot of students know about, may well. So you've got may suffer, will suffer, and may well suffer. So it's stronger than may, but not as strong as will probably. So may well suffer. Good for the speaking, good for the writing. From toxic gases that are usually situated. So that's good. This is an example of a complex sentence. So you got that, and you've got a passive structure. You've got the correct word order with usually, which is good. Near salt sources. So that wasn't a correction. That was correct. They've written a long sentence with some modal verbs, 2 relative clauses, a passive structure, and everything's correct. Okay, so we can see there that the person's a fairly strong 6. They just, you know, if they had, for example, gotten this one correct, you'd already be thinking 7. In addition, more useful jobs. should be paid highly. For example, stuntsmen should be paid a lot. Okay. So I'm just going to make this more complex. Might be a bit difficult. Rare useful jobs should be paid more highly. For example, stuntsmen should be paid a lot. Okay, it's a bit. I'd have to change this significantly to put something in there. In the world, there are just a few. So again, an article mistake there. There are just a few professionals. Or if you wanted to say few, because there are two things. There's the pessimistic few and the optimistic a few. But if you wanted to use the pessimistic few with no article, then it's few. There are few professionals who are paid a good amount. Okay, who are paid a good amount. So that's something that, you know, someone who has this level should get correct. Paid a good amount. When we have amount, we have a. Okay, so this one looks to be a little bit more accurate. The mistake up the top there, the mistake there, yeah, but it's definitely more accurate there. Okay, the conclusion. Okay, in conclusion, I give people who think that celebrities. Oh, I think I missed that spelling mistake before. 2 L's. Are paid, and here we have it again, a fair amount. So that's a repeated mistake due to the fact that people agree on the price. Okay, so as we can see, there are mistakes. There is some range. What mark is it? Maybe let's get this down on the list first. So does the writer use a range of complex structures? Yes, there are quite a few there. How often does the writer make mistakes? Rarely, no. Occasionally, no. At times, no. Frequently. Well, I think if you're optimistic, you'd say at times. If you're pessimistic, you would say frequently. But I would choose at times. At times. Are the mistakes noticeable? Well, I think that the plus ER, I think that was a noticeable mistake. And some of those ones where, you know, what there was, they began a new sentence. Where was it? You know, this one here where there was a capital letter, but it wasn't the beginning of a sentence. That's quite noticeable. And I think, you know, right at the very beginning, there's a mistake. So a mistake at the very beginning is always noticeable, unfortunately. Okay. So I'm going to put here, yes, a bit. Not incredibly noticeable. There was no like, he go. Nothing that bad. Are the mistakes with simple or complex structures? Well, I mean, what did we have there? We had articles. And yeah, the other mistakes were generally with complex. So that's good. If you make mistakes with simple structures, you're probably looking at a 5. So yeah, make sure you get the simple ones correct. Do the mistakes interfere with understanding? No, everything was quite clear. So what does that mean? Let's look at the criteria. Okay, so the first one we're looking at here is a 7. And I think the key word there is a variety of complex structures. If we go down to a 6 in the official criteria, it says uses a mix. Okay, this is a bit subjective. What is a variety? What's a mix? But yeah, I mean, at least it's a mix. I could see a variety of complex structures there. You know, you had ifs, you had relative clauses, you had passives, you had superlatives, you had modal verbs, and even that use of would, which is not a very direct use of a modal verb. That's some people might say 6, some people might say 7. I'm going to go with a 7 for range. Produces frequent error-free sentences. So no, I don't think there we can say it was frequent. You know, if we come back and have a quick look, you can see that there are a couple of mistakes in the introduction. There are a few mistakes there. A generous examiner might say, okay, you know, a generous examiner might say frequent. Bring that back. But that's where I'd give it a cross. I'd say no, it doesn't produce frequent error-free sentences. You know, good control of grammar, no, not a good control. So we come down here, make some errors in grammar. Yeah, definitely make some errors, but rarely reduce communication. So that yes, they make mistakes, they need to get a little bit more accurate, but I can understand everything. Okay, so that's it for this video. Please, if you have a question about anything I've said about this writing, let me know down below. And if you do have a question about one specific point, if you could also write the time of the video. These are quite long videos, so I may need to look back at the precise words I used in order to answer your question. And comments are more than welcome, and if you did like it, please like and subscribe.